She said it like it was nothing, just one sentence that made the whole restaurant go silent. "It was just dinner with an old friend," my wife said, smiling too sweetly, her hand still holding her wine glass like nothing was wrong. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me, because I already knew who that old friend was. Her ex, the one she swore she'd never speak to again. They thought I'd sit there, pretending not to care. But they didn't see the message I'd found that morning. The one that said, "Last night was perfect." I needed that. She thought she'd hidden it well. She thought I was blind. She had no idea I'd already planned my next move. Before I tell you how it all unraveled, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and leave a comment. Because this story, you're not ready for how it ends. That it all started 3 weeks ago. The signs were small at first. Sarah, my wife of 20 years, suddenly had a work friend named Mark. She said he'd just moved to town and needed help getting settled. Late-night phone calls, texts during dinner, little bursts of laughter that used to be mine. She'd turn her phone screen away every time I walked into the room. I told myself not to be paranoid. After all, we'd been through so much together: mortgages, raising kids, building a life. But that kind of trust, it only takes one lie to shatter. The first red flag came one Saturday morning when she said she was going shopping with coworkers. She came home hours later smelling like someone else's cologne. I noticed but said nothing. I wanted proof, not suspicion. That proof came a week later. Her phone buzzed while she was folding laundry. A message preview popped up. "Next time, I'm buying dinner. You deserve it." From a number she hadn't saved. The tone was too familiar, too intimate. I copied the number into my phone, and within seconds, I saw the name appear from an old contact photo I'd forgotten existed. Mark, her college boyfriend. That night, while she hummed in the kitchen making pasta, I sat at the table watching her every move. The same woman who used to cry when we couldn't afford our first house was now lying to me with the ease of breathing. "How's your friend from work?" I asked casually. She didn't even flinch. "Oh, she's good," she said too fast. "She?" I repeated. Her spoon froze in the pot for half a second. That was all I needed. The next few days were quiet. She acted like everything was normal, but I knew her routine was shifting. She'd leave the house early, dressed nicer than usual, and return home later, flushed and distracted. When I asked how her day was, she gave short answers and changed the subject. I stopped asking. Instead, I started preparing. On Tuesday, I left work early and followed her car from a distance. She didn't go to any Target or HomeGoods like she claimed. She drove across town to a modern apartment complex, the kind with sleek glass balconies and a private garage. She parked, fixed her hair in the mirror, and walked inside with a small gift bag. I waited an hour. She didn't come out. When she finally returned home that night, she was glowing. I asked how shopping went. "Exhausting," she said, rolling her eyes. I smiled and kissed her forehead. "You're incredible," I said quietly. "I don't know how you do it all." Her smile faltered for just a second. She must have felt it, that edge in my voice. The next morning, I made breakfast like always. Bacon, eggs, toast. She sat down, scrolling through her phone with that half smile she got when she was texting him. I looked at her and said, "I'm thinking of doing something special for you. You've been working so hard lately." She looked up, curious. "Like what?" "A surprise," I said. "Something to show you how much I appreciate you." Her eyes softened. "That's sweet, Jack." But I wasn't doing it to be sweet. I was setting the stage. Because if she thought she could play me like a fool, she was about to learn I'd been playing along. That Friday night, her friend texted again. She turned her phone face down, pretending it didn't happen. I waited until she left the room, then flipped it over. Another message preview glowed on the screen. "Can't wait to see you Sunday. Same place. Sunday." The day she told me she'd be at a charity event with her sister. I looked at that message for a long time. The room was silent except for the ticking clock. That's when everything inside me went still. Not angry, not sad, just done. done pretending not to see what was right in front of me, that I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted her to walk into her own lie without realizing she'd already lost. So when Sunday came, I kissed her goodbye at the door like everything was normal. She smiled and said, "Don't wait up, it might run late." I watched her drive away, the sunlight flashing across the windshield, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing at all because I already knew where she was going. And I knew exactly who she'd be meeting there. Sunday afternoon, I followed her again, this time more carefully. She drove across town, her car weaving through the early summer traffic until she turned into the same sleek apartment complex I'd seen before. She parked in the visitor section, checked her reflection in the mirror, and fixed a strand of hair behind her ear. She looked nervous, almost excited. Then she grabbed a small tote bag and headed toward the elevators. I waited a few minutes before parking down the street and walking closer. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I just needed confirmation. Through the large lobby windows, I saw her step out of the elevator, her face lighting up at the sight of someone approaching. Him, Mark. Taller than I remembered from the old photos she used to show me back when we were dating. He hugged her like no time had passed, like they'd been waiting for this reunion their entire lives. She let him. That was all I needed. I walked back to my car, calm, cold, detached. I didn't rage, didn't cry, didn't even honk the horn out of frustration. Instead, I drove home, thinking through my next move. Years ago, I might have yelled, might have begged for an explanation, but not anymore. Not this time. This time, I would give her what she thought she wanted: freedom. The kind that costs everything. That evening, she returned home with that same glow on her face, her lips faintly touched with new lipstick, the kind she never wore for me anymore. "How was the event?" I asked casually, pouring myself a drink. She smiled, taking off her earrings. "It was fine. Long day. I'm exhausted." "Yeah," I said, my tone even. "You look like you had quite a day." She hesitated for a fraction of a second before heading upstairs. I watched her go, and I knew. Whatever this was, she thought she was in control. But she wasn't. Over the next few days, I started laying the groundwork. Quietly, methodically. I moved half our savings into a separate account she couldn't access. I met with a lawyer during my lunch breaks. I collected screenshots, messages, call logs, photos from the apartment complex's security feed that I obtained through a friend who worked there. Every detail went into a folder labeled simply "Closure." By Wednesday, I had everything I needed. That night, I made dinner like usual. Chicken Alfredo, her favorite. She came home late again, smiling, distracted. "Sorry, traffic was crazy," she said, setting down her purse. "No problem," I replied, pouring her a glass of wine. She looked at me suspiciously. "You're being nice." "Why wouldn't I be?" I asked, smiling. "You're my wife." Halfway through dinner, she reached for her phone when it buzzed. I caught the name before she could flip it over. "Mark." She saw me looking and froze. "It's just work stuff," she said quickly. "On a Sunday, during dinner?" I asked quietly. She stammered, "No, I mean, it's not like that." I leaned back, studying her. "Then what is it like, Sarah? You keep saying everything's fine, that I'm paranoid, but you've been lying for weeks." She looked like she'd been slapped. "You went through my phone?" "No," I said evenly. "I went through reality. You should try it sometime." Her eyes filled with tears instantly, the fake kind she always used when she got caught. "I was just helping him settle in," she said softly. "He doesn't know anyone here." I set my fork down. "You've been married to me for 20 years, Sarah. You think I don't recognize manipulation when I see it?" Her jaw clenched. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "You're underreacting to the fact that I know." She pushed back from the table. "You're being ridiculous. You're jealous." "Jealous," I said, standing now. "Jealous of a man who sends my wife heart emojis and thank you notes for last night. Jealous of someone who can't decorate his own apartment without using you as bait." Her eyes widened. "You saw the messages?" "All of them," I said. "And the pictures. The ones from his building. You looked happy." She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried to shift blame like she always did. You had no right to spy on me. I had every right to protect myself from someone pretending to be faithful. She glared at me, her voice trembling. Nothing happened. You're right, I said, walking toward the door. Nothing happened yet. I turned back to her. But that's not because you didn't want it to. It's because you hadn't had the chance. She didn't say a word, just stood there, arms crossed, trembling in anger and shame. I left her standing in that kitchen, surrounded by her lies. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed softly, even kissed my cheek on her way out the door. The mask was back in place. But masks don't hold forever. That afternoon, while she was at work, I made 3 phone calls. One to our bank, one to my lawyer, and one to the travel agency that handled our upcoming anniversary trip to Hawaii. Cancel the reservations, I said simply, under both names. By the time she came home, everything had changed, though she didn't know it yet. She walked in, tossed her bag onto the couch, and smiled. You'll never believe the day I had, she said. You're right, I replied, staring at her. I probably wouldn't. That night, while she slept soundly beside me, I slipped out of bed and went into the office. I opened my laptop, logged into our joint accounts, and removed her access. Then I placed the folder labeled Closure on the desk. It was full of truth, cold, undeniable truth that I sat there for a long time, staring at her handwriting on old anniversary cards pinned to the wall. For years, I believed those words meant something. But now, they were just ink. Lies dressed up as love. And as I turned off the light, one thought ran through my mind. She thought she'd been playing me. But the game had just started. The next morning, she woke up humming like nothing had happened. She made pancakes, kissed me on the cheek, and chatted about her day as if the air between us wasn't thick with lies. I watched her carefully, noting every movement, every tone. She was too calm, too rehearsed. That's when I realized she truly believed she still had control. She thought I was the same man who used to swallow his doubts for the sake of peace. She didn't understand that silence can be more dangerous than shouting. I'd already made my decision. The plan was simple. Let her dig the hole herself, and when she was standing at the bottom, hand her the shovel so she could see what she'd done. She left for work around 8. I waited until her car disappeared down the street, then called my lawyer, Mark Henderson, the kind of man who could turn heartbreak into a legal masterpiece. She's still lying, I said, and she's planning to see him again. He paused. Do you have proof? Enough to sink a ship, I answered. He told me to come by that afternoon. Before I left, I gathered the folder I'd prepared, the texts, the screenshots, the photos of her walking into that apartment. Every secret she thought she could hide, printed in black and white. I looked at the wedding picture on the mantel before walking out the door. 2 smiling faces frozen in time, holding hands, promising forever. I almost laughed. The law office. Mark flipped through the papers, his expression unreadable. You've got everything you need, he said finally. Adultery, deception, financial motive, it's all here. We can move fast. How fast? I asked. If she doesn't contest it, within 60 days. If she does, we'll still win. Just be ready for her to play the victim. I nodded. I've been ready for years. He handed me a pen. Sign here, and here. My signature looked steady, almost peaceful. When I walked out of that building, it felt like shedding 20 years of weight. That evening, she came home buzzing with energy, talking about plans for the weekend. I was thinking of hosting a small dinner, she said. Just a few friends from work. You'll like them. I smiled faintly. Sounds perfect, I said. I'll handle dessert. She blinked, surprised at how calm I was. Really? Of course. I want it to be a night to remember. She grinned, completely unaware that she was walking straight into the storm. Saturday arrived. The house smelled like wine and roasted chicken. Candles flickered on the dining table. Our guests, 3 of her co-workers, arrived just after 7, laughing, chatting, filling the air with harmless small talk. I played the role of the charming husband, pouring drinks, cracking jokes, while she glowed in her element. Halfway through dinner, her phone lit up on the counter. She glanced at it quickly, then looked away. But I saw the name. Mark. Again. My stomach tightened, but I didn't let it show. I simply walked over, picked up the phone, and set it beside her plate. You might want to get that, I said with a smile. The table fell silent. Her co-workers shifted uncomfortably. It's nothing, she said, her voice tight. Are you sure? I asked. Because it seems like Mark calls a lot for nothing. Her face drained of color. One of her friends tried to change the subject, but I wasn't done. You know, Sarah, it's interesting how often your old boyfriend needs your help decorating his apartment. Maybe we should all stop by and admire your work. The silence was deafening. She stood up suddenly, eyes blazing. We're not doing this here, she hissed. Why not? I asked, still calm. Everyone should know what kind of decorator you are. Her co-worker's eyes darted between us. One muttered, maybe we should go. Sarah snapped, no, stay. She was trembling now, fury and fear mixing on her face. You're humiliating me, she said. I leaned closer. No, Sarah, you did that yourself. I'm just showing the audience what they've been missing. She stormed out of the room, her heels clicking like gunshots on the hardwood floor. The guests quickly excused themselves, mumbling awkward goodbyes. I didn't stop them. When the door closed behind the last one, the house was quiet again. 10 minutes later, she came back downstairs, mascara streaked across her face. You think this is funny? She said. You think you can embarrass me into staying? No, I said softly. I think I can remind you that lies always have an audience. She stared at me, breathing hard. You're being cruel. No, I said again. I'm being honest. Something you might want to try sometime. She sank into a chair, defeated. It wasn't an affair, she whispered. We just needed to talk. And how many times did you talk? I asked. In his apartment? Over dinner? At night, while I was sitting here thinking you were at work? She said nothing. I leaned forward. Do you even remember what honesty feels like? She started to cry. Real tears this time, not the performative ones. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I stood up. But it did. And you can't undo that. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Jack, please. Don't throw this away. I looked at her, really looked. The woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes, who held my hand through my father's funeral, who once said I made her feel safe. Now she looked small, desperate, like a stranger wearing my wife's face. I'm not throwing anything away, I said. I'm letting go of what's already gone. She followed me to the doorway as I grabbed my keys. Where are you going? Out, I said simply. To think. You can't just leave, she shouted. We need to talk about this. No, I said, turning back to her. You need to think about why you thought I wouldn't notice. Then I walked out. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city lights blurring past, my mind quiet for the first time in weeks. I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. I was thinking about peace. About the kind that comes only when you finally stop fighting for someone who's already chosen someone else. By the time I got home, the house was dark. She was asleep on the couch, clutching her phone. I looked at her one last time, the woman who'd once been my whole world, and felt nothing but relief. In the morning, I placed an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was everything. Divorce papers, financial separation notices, and one handwritten note. You wanted freedom. Here it is. Don't call me. Then I walked out the door, leaving behind the ashes of a marriage that had already burned itself to dust. By the time she woke up and found the envelope, I was already gone. I imagine the sound she made when she opened it was something between disbelief and panic. I didn't stick around to find out. I drove to my brother's house 2 towns over, handed him the spare key to my place, and told him I might be gone a while. He didn't ask questions. He'd seen the cracks forming long before I admitted them. That day, I stayed quiet, scrolling through old photos on my phone, vacations, anniversaries, random moments that used to feel permanent. Now, Every smile looked staged, every laugh rehearsed. I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for years. We'd been pretending long before she ever met her ex again. BY noon. My phone started buzzing. First a call, then another, then texts, one after another. We need to talk. Please answer me. You can't just walk away from this. I ignored them all. The part of me that used to rush to fix things was gone. That part died the moment she decided that honesty was optional. Later that afternoon, my brother walked into the room holding his phone. She's been calling me, he said. What do you want me to tell her? Tell her I'm busy rebuilding the life she tried to burn down. He nodded and didn't bring it up again. The next morning, I returned home to find her car in the driveway. She was sitting on the front porch, eyes red, clutching the letter I'd left. I stepped out of my truck, calm and collected. We're not doing this, I said before she could speak. You can't just end 20 years with a note, she said, her voice cracking. You ended it weeks ago. You just didn't notice, I replied. Now you get to live with it. She stood up quickly, blocking the door. Please, Jack. I made a mistake. He doesn't mean anything to me. I stared at her, the same way I used to when I caught our kids lying about broken dishes. Then why did you lie about him? Why hide it for weeks? Why tell me I was crazy every time I asked for the truth? She shook her head, reaching for me. Because I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. You lost me the moment you decided I wasn't worth honesty, I said, pushing past her and walking inside. She followed me into the kitchen, her voice trembling. I'll do anything to fix this. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. Just don't throw us away. I poured myself a cup of coffee, ignoring her tears. You keep saying us like it still exists, I said quietly. But there is no us anymore. There's you and your regrets. She wiped her face with shaking hands. I never slept with him, she whispered. I swear. I looked at her over the rim of my cup. You think that makes it better? You think the betrayal only counts if it's physical? You gave him what was supposed to be mine. Your time, your trust, your loyalty. That's worse than anything else. She broke down, sobbing into her hands. But I didn't comfort her. I'd done that too many times before. The following days were a blur of legal paperwork, meetings, and signatures. Every signature felt like closing a door that should have been shut long ago. I moved the rest of her things into the garage, neatly packed and labeled. When she came to collect them, I wasn't home. She left a note on the counter that said, "Please call me." I didn't. That night, I sat on the porch with a beer in hand, listening to the crickets. The house felt different, quieter, lighter, alive again. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for footsteps, excuses, or lies. I was just existing, peacefully. A week later, she showed up again, this time at my work. She waited by my truck, looking worn down, her hair unbrushed, her face pale. "Jack, please," she said as I walked past her. "We can start over." I stopped, turning slowly. Start over? You can't rebuild something you burned to the ground. He used me, she blurted out. He never cared about me. He just wanted to see if he could ruin what we had. I nodded. And he did. But not because of him, because you let him. She tried to grab my arm, but I stepped back. You don't understand, she pleaded. He meant nothing. Then you destroyed everything for nothing, I said coldly. That's not better, Sarah. That's worse. She broke down right there in the parking lot, sobbing so hard people started to stare. I got in my truck and drove away without looking back. Over the next few months, she tried every trick: emails, letters, mutual friends, even showing up at my parents' house pretending she needed closure. But the truth was, closure had already happened the day she asked me to understand her lies. The divorce went through quietly. She didn't contest it in the end. Maybe she finally realized there was nothing left to fight for. The house, the savings, the car, all stayed with me. She walked away with the same thing she'd offered me when she betrayed me. Nothing. 6 months later, I was a different man. I started working out again, reconnected with old friends, even took a solo trip to Montana just to breathe fresh air and feel what peace really meant. I learned to cook for one, to enjoy silence, to sleep without wondering who my wife was texting at midnight. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. I miss you. I still love you. I deleted it without replying. 2 years passed. I met someone new, a woman named Laura, kind, grounded, the kind of person who speaks truth even when it's uncomfortable. She doesn't play games, doesn't hide behind half-truths. When she says she loves me, I believe her because I can see it in her eyes. We got married quietly, no big ceremony, just a handful of people who actually mattered. I heard through a mutual friend that Sarah never remarried. They said she still lives alone, still blames everyone but herself for how things turned out. Maybe that's her punishment, living every day knowing she traded everything for a lie. Sometimes, people ask if I'd ever take her back if she showed up again, crying, apologizing, promising she'd changed. I always say the same thing. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the fire that burned you. It means walking away without hate, without bitterness, but with the knowledge that you'll never step into the flames again. She once said she needed one night for closure. I gave her forever to close the chapter on us. And I don't regret it for a second. If you stayed with me until the end, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and leave a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of a man reclaiming his worth.